Forward shaft lean is a must-have if we're going to want to play consistent, powerful golf. So if we're going to want to clear the hips, compress the ball, and release it out in front like all the touring pros do, we have to have that base mechanic of clearing the hips. So when you're working on this at the range and you start firing your hips and they stop and then the club passes and flips and you think you're clearing your hips and you're doing it as hard as you can, or you even try to do it slow and it stops and it flips, you might even stand up out of posture. All these things can kind of happen and we're kind of wondering what's going on. Well, I have a really great drill for you that's not only going to show you the exact mechanics of how we swing with the hips in sync with the club, it's also going to be a great feel drill that you can use on the golf course that's going to help you sync up the club through impact so that you can compress it and release it out in front. So how this drill works is we're going to imagine that, well, you're going to use your belt line. So you're going to imagine a belt around you. So even if you're not wearing one, imagine a belt around your waist. And what we're going to do is, in our mind, we're going to turn this belt into a steering wheel. So if the belt is a steering wheel and I'm just standing straight up and down, that would be driving straight. If I take my steering wheel just like I'm driving a car and turn it to the right, or I turn it to the left, that's how I open and close my hips. So we know in the backswing, we're going to turn the steering wheel to the right, and then on the downswing, we're going to turn our steering wheel to the left. So that's the move you're already really good at. You know to turn your hips and fire the hips, but what's the missing piece? The missing piece is what are we doing with the club in relationship to the hips? When you're working on this and you come up and you fire the hips and you have no idea where the club is, that's the number one thing that's going to cause you to stop, flip, and even stand up out of posture when you're going into impact. So what you're going to do is imagine that steering wheel, and we're going to work on how the club attaches to that steering wheel. So what I'm going to have you do is go up to the top of your swing, and when you come down, I want you to pause when you're about parallel to the ground. And from here, I'm going to have you take a steel rod from the butt end of the club, and I want you to attach it to your steering wheel. So in your mind, there's a steel rod, and this is welded on. It cannot move unless the steering wheel moves. So in order to move this club head to the ball, we have to turn our steering wheel to the left, or opening up to get this club head to go to the ball. Where you're making the mistake is you're ripping the steering wheel off of the club, and now the club can't move. Now you're going to have to use your hands to try to play catch up. So if we have this steel rod attached to our steering wheel, for every inch we open up the steering wheel, that's going to move the club head into the ball. That's our visual. That's how the mechanics work of how we get forward shaft lean and then release it out in front. So how this works, as in slow speed, we can keep this attached to the steering wheel, but when we add speed to the hips and we're turning this through, the club head in actuality is going to release out in front. But in our mind, it's going to be attached to that steering wheel the entire time. So how we start applying this is, first I want you to take some dry swings where you go up to the top of your swing, just like we did right here, attach that butt end of the club to your steering wheel, and start getting a sensation for when you're turning that steering wheel to the left, that's what's moving the club back and forth. Go ahead and brush the turf, turn it back and forth, and that's what's moving the club. If I'm doing this incorrectly, we're going to notice the club head past the hands. So here, I should be in the same position. Let me show you from this way. I should be in the same position here as I was when the club head's parallel to the ground. It's not going to move because it's a steel rod attached to there. And that's the feel we're going to use when we start hitting some shots. So we know that the steering wheel is going to move the club head to the ball. So when I want you to start off with some easy shots where you take the club just about halfway back, move the steering wheel through, and just hit some little chips just like that, where you're actually utilizing this visual to move the club head into the ball. Once you get a good feel for that, you'll probably start hitting some really sharp shots, because this is what allows us to get that compression on the ball. When we are moving with the club, we can keep the hands out in front, which allows us to get the forward shaft lean or stability of the face through impact. And again, when we start adding speed, it'll automatically release out in front beautifully. So once you get really comfortable with that, what I want you to do is start taking some bigger swings, just gradually bigger, but as you get to the top of your swing, when the hands get about over parallel, then you're going to allow them to get parallel. So when you get to the club parallel position, I want you to almost feel like you're driving straight in front of you. So if you have the camera set in front of you, if you're driving straight, your steering wheel's pointing straight. And then from here, that's when you're going to turn it through. So you're going to almost time it to where the club's parallel to the ground. Then we've got we're kind of attaching the rod to the belt and turning through. So now with that visual, I am imagining that once that club gets about parallel to the ground, it's attached, and now these hips are going to fire open. It's going to clear, and everything, because I'm moving the club head into the ball with my hips, and now we have a very easy visual to see how that works. Now we can get that compression and release it out in front. So once we get a pretty good feel for like an easy full swing, then you can start taking some rips at it and start bombing it, because now you can clear the hips in sync with the full swing. Now there we go. My feel was that this club was attached to my steering wheel, and I've just moved that through. But because of the speed that I was moving at, the club's going to automatically release out in front. So if we're doing this, we're going to get the stable club head, we're going to get the forward shaft lean, and we're going to be able to clear the hips. But that's just the first half. We need to make sure we're doing a couple other things to allow this move to work, because when you do this, you will clear those hips, you will get forward shaft lean. But the number one problem I see when players are doing this, they tend to not shallow out the club and square it up while they're doing this. So you might notice these shots start going off to the right. So by making sure we're making these two moves on the downswing, the second half of this, then we're going to guarantee that we can be coming from the right angle, square it up, and compress the heck out of the ball. Now we're going to play a preview of what we call the anti-roll method that our owner and head instructor Clay is going to show you how to do both of those in this video. We're going to play a preview of it at the end of this that you can see the entire lesson simply by clicking on the iCard. And if you don't see that, that's fine. You can click on the link in the description below. And if you pair up the two moves from the anti-roll method with clearing the hips and the downswing and this feel, you're going to be puring the ball like you never have before.
Here's the bottom line. If you've been taught to roll the club in the early downswing, that causes the shaft to get steep. And that steep club causes all your problems. It causes you to hit it way behind the big hitters and way inconsistent with your quality of strike. So you're in the tall grass and the trees and the hazards all day long. Now the great news is this. There's really only two pieces that you need to know to fix all these problems. The first one is we need to learn the proper way to square up the club face. Instead of rolling the forearms and getting steep, there's another way that the pros do this. Once you learn this right way to square up the club face, then you can shallow out from the inside and everything starts to fit together. Now I'm going to teach you this right now in what I call the anti-roll method. You may also hear this called the motorcycle move or the tour twist, but let's walk through exactly how to do that. Now what I want you to do is go ahead and go kind of in the last parallel in the downswing. So here I want my hips to go ahead and be opening up. I want my club to be parallel with the ground, and I want my hands to be in front of my right thigh. Now, when I take my grip, you're going to notice that when I do this, the club face is basically straight up and down. So if I'm looking at it from this angle, you'll see the face is straight up and down, and my logo of my glove is pointed out in front of me. Now from there,